Joran Miller had worked in the scrapyards for years, long enough that the sight of broken machines didn't surprise him anymore. Old starships drifted there like bones in a graveyard, their metal bodies scarred by wars nobody even remembered. He was a mechanic, not a historian. To him, a ship was only worth the parts it could give. That morning was no different. Joran floated between piles of junk, his boots magnetized to the hull of a shattered cruiser. He had a small toolbox strapped to his side and grease stains that never seemed to wash out from his shirt. The scrapyard was noisy as usual, welders sparking, cutters whining, traders shouting prices across the intercom channels. To most it was chaos. To Joran it was just another workday. But then he saw it. Half buried beneath twisted plates of steel was something shaped like a chair, though larger, heavier, and made of a strange metal that didn't look rusted at all. It caught his eye because everything else in the yard looked broken, but this thing seemed asleep. He climbed down carefully, brushing away the debris with his gloved hands. The object had tall, curved sides, almost like the back of a throne, though it was cracked through the center. Strange lines of silver ran across it like veins, glowing faintly when his fingers touched the surface. "Hey Miller," called out a voice. It was Tom Reyes, another scavenger who'd worked the yard for nearly as long. "Don't mess with that. Stuff like that ain't safe." Joran looked up at him. "It's just a machine. Everything breaks. Everything can be fixed." Tom shook his head, his face uneasy. "Not that one. Folks say it belonged to the old rulers. They say the universe remembers things like that. You don't want to stir it awake." Joran almost laughed, but something in Tom's voice told him the man wasn't joking. Still, he felt something deep inside, a pull he couldn't explain. Machines didn't usually make him feel anything, but this one did. He sat back on his heels and studied the relic. If it's broken, then maybe it just needs someone willing to care enough to fix it. Tom muttered something under his breath and walked away, but Joran stayed. The longer he stared, the stranger it felt. His heart beat faster, like he'd stumbled onto something that wasn't meant to be hidden. He could almost hear a hum, faint and steady, coming from within the relic. It wasn't dead metal. It was waiting. Joran didn't know why, but he decided then and there he was going to repair it. Not for money, not for scrap, but because it didn't feel like junk at all. It felt like it mattered. And for the first time in years, standing in the silence of the scrapyard, Joran Miller wondered if maybe his life was about to change. Joran Miller dragged the strange relic back to his workshop at the edge of the scrapyard. The shop wasn't much. A few tables, scattered tools, and walls patched with spare panels he had welded himself. It smelled of oil, old wires, and metal dust. But to Joran it was home. He set the relic down carefully, brushing more rust and dirt away. Up close it looked even stranger. The cracks across its frame seemed deep, yet the material itself didn't look weak. In fact, it looked indestructible, like it had been built to survive forever. He ran his hand across the surface. For a moment he thought he felt a pulse, like the beat of a heart. He pulled his hand back quickly and laughed nervously. "I must be tired." Still, he couldn't stay away from it. The chair seemed to be waiting for him. 4 days Joran worked. He replaced fractured conduits, patched torn plates, and tested wires that behaved nothing like any wires he had ever seen. Sparks jumped across circuits even when the power was off. When he tried to weld one of the cracks shut, the metal shifted under his torch as if it wanted to heal on its own. One night, while the scrapyard outside was quiet, the relic lit up. Lines of silver light spread across its surface as he fitted a broken shard back into place. Joran stumbled backward, shielding his eyes. A low hum filled the air, deep and steady, as if the machine had just taken its first breath in centuries. And then he saw it. The air around him shimmered, and suddenly he wasn't in his workshop anymore. He was standing in the middle of a vast hall. Starships hovered outside windows larger than mountains. Soldiers in shining armor knelt before a throne. A human figure sat upon it, calm and powerful, though Joran couldn't see his face. The vision vanished in an instant. Joran blinked, his heart pounding. He was back in the workshop, staring at the relic, which now glowed faintly in the dark. "What are you?" he whispered. The relic answered. Not with words spoken aloud, but with a voice in his mind. It was warm, commanding, and impossibly old. "You are heir to what was forgotten." Joran staggered back, shaking his head. "No. I'm a mechanic. I fix things. That's all." But the relic didn't let go. It pulsed again, brighter this time, and tools on his table rattled. Joran could feel it reaching for him, as if it recognized him. The next morning, when Tom Reyes stopped by and peeked inside, he froze. "Miller, what did you do?" "That thing's alive." Joran wiped sweat from his face, his hands trembling. "I didn't bring it back," he said quietly. "It woke itself up. I just gave it a reason." And deep inside, though he tried to deny it, Joran knew his life had crossed a line. Whatever this relic was, it wasn't just another broken machine. It had chosen him. Joran Miller had never been a man who liked attention. He was the kind of mechanic who kept his head down, fixed what was broken, and minded his own business. But after the relic lit up in his workshop, attention was something he could no longer avoid. It started with whispers. Other scavengers in the scrapyard noticed the glow seeping from the cracks in his shop door late at night. Some claimed they heard the hum of the relic even from a distance, like a song in the air. Soon, traders and workers came asking questions. They wanted to know what Joran was hiding, what treasure he had uncovered. At first he tried to brush it off. "Just an old piece of junk I'm working on," he'd say. But people weren't convinced. And in places like the scrapyard, rumors spread faster than light. One evening Tom Reyes pulled Joran aside. His face was pale, his voice low. "Listen, Miller. That relic of yours, it's got eyes on it. Not just from the yard. From outside. Big players." Joran frowned. "What kind of players?" "The kind you don't want knocking on your door. Warlords. Raiders. Maybe even governments. That throne you found, people believe it's more than just scrap." Joran wanted to argue, but deep down he knew Tom was right. The visions, the voice, the way the relic moved under his hands, it wasn't ordinary. It wasn't junk. That night, Joran woke to the sound of metal scraping outside his shop. He grabbed a wrench and slowly stepped toward the door. When he pushed it open, he saw 3 figures in dark suits of armor standing in the shadows. Their eyes glowed faintly, their weapons drawn. One of them stepped forward. "Hand it over, human. That relic doesn't belong to you." Joran's chest tightened. He wanted to fight back, but what chance did a mechanic with a wrench have against armed soldiers? He glanced back at the relic, which sat in the middle of his workshop, glowing brighter than ever. Before he could speak, the relic pulsed with light. The hum grew louder, shaking the walls. Sparks flew from the soldiers' weapons, their rifles locking up. One tried to fire, but the gun sputtered and died in his hands. Another fell to his knees, clutching his head as if unseen hands pressed down on him. Joran froze. The relic was protecting him. The intruders staggered back, panicked, and then retreated into the shadows. Within moments they were gone, leaving Joran alone in the silence. He stood there, breathing hard, his wrench still in his hand. Slowly he looked back at the throne. Its glow was steady now, calm, almost like it was watching him. Tom was right. The relic wasn't just a machine. It carried weight, history, and power. And the universe, dangerous, hungry, and divided, was beginning to notice. Joran whispered to himself, "I don't want this." But even as he said it, he knew the choice might no longer be his to make. The day came sooner than Joran expected. The scrapyard sky, usually quiet except for drifting wrecks, filled with warships. Dozens at first, then hundreds. Their silhouettes blotted out the stars, engines glowing like red eyes. They hadn't come to trade or scavenge. They had come for the relic. Joran stood at the window of his workshop, his heart heavy. Ships from every corner of the galaxy had gathered, each flying banners of different factions. Some wanted to take the relic for themselves, others wanted to destroy it before anyone else could claim it. Whatever their reason, they all agreed on one thing: a simple human mechanic wasn't meant to hold it. Tom Reyes burst through the door out of breath. "They're not going to wait much longer, Miller. If you don't give them what they want, they'll burn this whole place to ash." Joran looked at the relic. It glowed brighter than ever, almost urging him forward. He shook his head. "I'm no leader. I never asked for this." Tom grabbed his arm. "Doesn't matter if you asked. That thing chose you. And now the galaxy's waiting to see what you'll do." Outside, the fleets aligned their weapons. The scrapyard workers scrambled for cover. Joran knew he couldn't run. He couldn't hide. With a deep breath, he stepped toward the throne. His hands trembled as he reached out, touching the cold surface. The moment he sat down, everything changed. Light exploded from the relic, flooding the workshop, then the scrapyard, then the sky itself. Beams of silver energy shot outward, wrapping around every ship in orbit. Engines stalled, weapons powered down, and entire fleets froze in place as if time itself had bent. Joran gasped, gripping the arms of the throne. He could feel everything, ships, soldiers, entire worlds, linked to him. It wasn't power in the way people imagined. It was connection, like thousands of voices suddenly singing the same note. In his mind, images returned. The old halls of kings, the peace treaties signed by human hands, the betrayals that tore it all apart. The relic wasn't just a seat, It was history, memory, and promise all woven together. Across the galaxy, commanders and leaders felt the same pull. On their bridges, admirals dropped to one knee, not because they were forced, but because the throne carried an ancient oath written into the stars themselves. Their ancestors had sworn it long ago, and now it bound them again. Tom shielded his eyes, staring at Joran in awe. "Good God, they're bowing to you." Joran swallowed hard, his voice shaking. "I didn't ask for this. I don't want to rule anyone." But the throne didn't care about want. It only cared about what was needed. And right now the galaxy needed someone to sit upon it. Joran Miller, once just a mechanic, realized he was no longer hidden in the shadows of broken ships. The universe had crowned him whether he liked it or not. The scrapyard was silent after the light faded. Ships that had once threatened to destroy everything now hovered in stillness, powerless to act without Joran's will. He sat frozen in the throne, his chest rising and falling as if he had just run for miles. His hands gripped the armrests so tightly his knuckles turned white. For a long moment he couldn't move. He didn't want to believe what he had just felt. Thousands of voices, millions of lives, all tied to him like threads pulled together by the relic. They weren't just obeying. They were recognizing him. Tom Reyes stood a few steps away, his eyes wide. "Do you understand what just happened? They listened to you." Every ship out there bowed. Joran shook his head. "I didn't command them. I didn't even say a word. It was the throne." He looked down at his hands, still trembling. "I'm just a man who fixes things." But deep inside he knew that wasn't true anymore. Across the scrapyard sky, beacons began to light up. Not just from the war fleets but from forgotten corners of space. Old human colonies that had been silent for centuries suddenly came alive, sending signals into the void. It was as if the relic's awakening had reached them, pulling them back into the light of history. Humanity, scattered and broken, was remembering itself. Joran felt a lump in his throat. For so long, people had laughed at humans, called them small, unimportant, nothing but workers and wanderers in a galaxy of giants. But now those same giants were lowering their heads. Not out of fear, but because their ancestors had once sworn loyalty to humanity's promise of unity. The weight of it pressed on Joran's shoulders. He didn't want crowns or armies. He didn't care about power. But he couldn't deny what the relic had shown him. The galaxy wasn't just broken metal like the scrapyard, it was a fractured machine and someone had to repair it. Maybe that was why the throne had chosen him. Not because he was strong, not because he wanted to rule, but because he was the kind of man who couldn't walk away from something broken. Tom stepped closer, his voice softer now. "So, what happens next?" Joran looked out the window at the fleets waiting silently in orbit. He could feel their eyes on him, their hope, their fear. He thought of the voices he had heard, the weight of history pressing into him. Slowly he released his grip on the throne and spoke, his voice steady. "What happens next is we fix this. Not with war. Not with conquest. With repair." The relic pulsed warmly beneath him as if agreeing. Across the stars the message carried. The King of Stars had returned, not as a conqueror, but as a mechanic who believed nothing was beyond saving. Joran Miller had once been just another man in the scrapyard. But now he was the reminder that humanity was never small at all. The universe had remembered its king. And this time it would not forget.